Israel continued its strikes on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon today, hitting 1,600 targets over the last 24 hours. The current military campaign represents what Israeli officials call a new phase of their war against Hezbollah, leading many military analysts to ask if the increased hostilities have the Middle East approaching a full-scale war between Israel and up to 5 regional enemies led by Iran. How could a potential 5-front war between Israel and Iran's axis of resistance play out? Joining me now to discuss this is retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler. He's a 26-year veteran of the Navy, former staff member at the Pentagon, and is now a senior research fellow for naval warfare and advanced technology at the Heritage Foundation. Captain Sadler, welcome to Washington Watch.
Hey, thank you very much for having me on tonight.
So let's lay out the players in Iran's axis of resistance that are currently engaged with Israel.
Well, certainly. So, first and foremost was Hamas, proxy based in Gaza, which launched the barbarous attacks of October 7th, which triggered this current cycle of violence. Then there's the Houthis that followed up not much later with a series of cruise and drone and ballistic missile attacks directly against Israel, but most importantly, an enduring attack against international shipping in the Red Sea. And then, I guess most timely, is the Hezbollah terrorist organization based out of Lebanon that's been launching cross-border attacks for many months now, starting from the day after that October 7th attack last year by Hamas. Of course, all of them get support through money as well as munitions and training from Iran.
Now, reports in the last few days has been that Hezbollah, which is considered to be the kind of the jewel in the crown of Iran's axis of resistance, is pleading for Iran to enter the fray. What do we know about that?
Well, the first thing that's most, illustrative of the dynamic that's playing out right now is that after the leader of Hamas was assassinated in Tehran recently, there was no massed Iranian retaliation like there was for the killing of several IRGC senior leaders in Damascus that occurred back in April. And so Hezbollah has been agitating ever since for a more forceful Iranian response, and that has not come. And I don't think it's going to be in the cards in the near future either. And so, right now there was a statement from the Iranian president in behest of his UN General Assembly appearance that Hezbollah is largely on its own. He used that word several times, that Hezbollah has to be prepared to be on their own. And I thought that was very telling.
So, Captain, is that a fear of drawing the United States into the conflict that is keeping Iran kind of out of this? Or is it more because of their relationship with Russia? And I think Russia is dependent upon some of their arms right now for their conflict with Ukraine.
Well, I'd add into to the mix China. But it's not it's very telling that after the assassination of Haniyeh in Tehran, then very soon, within the next 48 hours, 72 hours, you had Shoigu fly in from Moscow on behest of President Putin. Now, this is the former defense minister, to assure Tehran that delivery of S-400 missile systems, air defense, were forthcoming, but also Russia relies on Iranian drones and ballistic missiles to continue its war in Ukraine, to also argue for, restraint. And it seems to have played out to their benefit, to their mutual benefit. But China, too, wants to see at least a limit geographically on the scope of this war, because they rely on oil from the Arabian Gulf, and Iran getting embroiled into a regional war with Israel and the United States potentially would put in jeopardy a lot of their interest in the region, mostly oil and energy imports.
Oil always factors into these international conflicts. Hezbollah, although certainly well equipped and armed, still no match for Israel. If Iran does not come to their aid, as Hezbollah continues to be their proxy, this could be. I don't see Israel pulling back at this point until the threat has been eliminated. Do you?
No, there's nothing that would indicate that Israel is going to be able to adjust its trajectory for an incursion into southern Lebanon, unless, of course, Hezbollah changes its posture and its position. And again, that's probably unlikely. But for Hezbollah, they're not widely liked by the wider Lebanese population, and they have their own support base, of course. But without Iran's continued money and facilitation of arms transfers, their ability to coerce and to intimidate the other power bases in Lebanon starts to evaporate, and we could see the end of days for Hezbollah, God willing, hopefully.
What is Israel's greatest vulnerability at this point?
Israel's greatest vulnerability, and this is where Hezbollah becomes not necessarily an existential threat, but a very deadly one. They have well over 150,000 ballistic missiles. That would overwhelm their missile and air defense systems. So simply just launching wave after wave after wave, eventually Israel runs out of defenses and those rockets start to hit home. And so that is its biggest vulnerability. And it's really the card, the trump card that the Hezbollah has. But as long as Israel continues to degrade their launching systems and their command and control, it becomes less and less likely that Hezbollah can actually deliver on that threat.
That appears exactly what Israel is doing in these first few days, first going after command and control with the pagers and the walkie-talkies, eliminating them, then coming in, going after these primary launching sites to eliminate a lot of that and spread fear, by the way. I think the last week's, well, of course, Israel has not denied or acknowledged any responsibility there, but the terrorists have been terrorized by that event.
No, one shouldn't underestimate the psychological impact of having, what you would thought would have been a benign, tiny electronic device turning into a deadly one that's right next to you on your nightstand. And then immediately after that, what you thought was a secure means of backup communication, walkie-talkies exploding an even larger blast. And there are reports of other appliances and other things occurring. Again, some of those are unconfirmed. Certainly, the psychological impact on Hezbollah, it shouldn't be diminished.
Yeah, they're probably afraid to use the toaster for the Pop-Tarts. I mean, this is, it's all around them. They're in total disarray, I would imagine. How are they communicating at this point?
Well, looking at what they're able to still do, they were able to launch a fairly sizable missile barrage into Israel just recently in the last 24 hours. So they're able to still mount attacks. I think they're fairly limited in scale and scope of where they're attacking from and to, but they're still able to operate. But again, they still have the will to fight. They still seem to have some tactical operational control, but whether or not they're able to sustain that, and certainly if Israel decides to move into southern Lebanon and push them back by force, it's an open question as to how long they'll be able to sustain, the Hezbollah will be able to sustain a resistance.
Captain Sadler, I want to ask you your take on the United States at this point. We've heard very little in the last couple of weeks from the Biden administration that had been repeatedly kind of throttling back the Israeli response in Gaza. We've not heard much. What might the United States be doing? I know we've sent more troops into the region. What do you see on the horizon there in terms of the United States involvement?
Well, at this point, with this administration, I'm not so sure having this White House silent is a bad thing. I think that's probably a better thing than what we've seen in the last few months when they weren't so silent. And diplomacy that's been attempted by this White House has been lopsided, to say the least, and has been ineffective, I think, demonstrably. What needs to happen next is much more direct pressure applied on the Iranian regime, and I think that's antithetical to this White House for a host of reasons. And so we're really only going to see a change in tack until a new administration comes into place.
In the meantime, it remains a very volatile and dangerous world.
Well, absolutely.
Captain, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Have a good night.